I am Eleanor Hart, 72, and for most of my life, I believed in the quiet rhythm of ordinary days. Our house on Maple Street, a brick-lined home with faded red shutters, smelled of old wood, lavender polish, and the faint aroma of fresh bread I baked in the mornings. The world outside stirred softly, the wind rustled through the oak trees, and the distant sound of children playing in the park below mingled with the faint hum of city traffic. Clara, my daughter, was 45. Independent, busy, and yet she still came for morning coffee almost every day. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes we just sat, listening to the world wake up together. It was a routine, a gentle rhythm that had comforted me for decades. I liked mornings best, the smell of coffee, the warmth of the sun slipping through the curtains, the quiet ticking of the old clock in the hallway. Life felt steady, untroubled, safe. Remember the way the rain had fallen the night before, leaving droplets clinging to the window like tiny diamonds. I would sit by the window, knitting or reading, listening to the patter of rain against the roof and the distant whistle of a train. Peace, I thought. This is what life should be. And in my heart, I believed it always would be. That morning, Clara arrived with a cheerful smile, carrying a bag of pastries. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, her perfume mingling with the faint scent of rain lingering in my hair. Morning, Mom. Almond croissants, your favorite, she said, setting the bag on the table. I smiled, taking the small gift as if it were a talisman against some unspoken worry. Thank you, darling. You didn't have to. But as she set the bag down, I noticed a letter peeking out of her tote. A small envelope, plain, unremarkable. I told myself I was imagining things, that curiosity was unnecessary. Yet, a strange unease settled in my chest. There's always a moment when life shifts, a second before everything you know starts to unravel, and I would learn that morning that I had reached that moment. The day was crisp, with the soft smell of wet earth carried in through the open window. I went about clearing the breakfast dishes, feeling the warmth of the mug in my hand, the soft tick of the clock echoing in my ears. Everything seemed normal, yet a shadow hovered over the edges of my vision. I tried to ignore it. I reminded myself that Clara was my daughter, that our bond was built on decades of trust and love. But the world has a way of whispering truths we aren't ready to hear. Later, as Clara scrolled through her phone, I caught a glimpse of her expression. A fleeting flicker of tension crossed her face, a moment so quick that I almost missed it. She glanced up at me, smiled, and said, "Don't worry about it, Mom. Just work stuff." I nodded, letting the words settle on the surface of my mind, even as a quiet pulse of worry began to beat beneath. There was something she wasn't telling me. I could feel it, like a vibration in the air, subtle but unmistakable. That night, the house was quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of the streetlights. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window, wrapped in a shawl, and let my thoughts drift. Memories of Clara as a little girl filled my mind, her first steps on the lawn, the sound of her laughter echoing through the rooms, the nights she had cried in my arms. I had raised her with love and patience, believing that those lessons would guide her through life, and yet, an unfamiliar tension gnawed at me. It was not anger, not fear, but a quiet anticipation, as if the air itself had shifted. I couldn't see what was coming, but I could feel its weight pressing down, subtle and insistent. I realized then that peace is fragile. It can be broken without warning, in moments so small that you almost don't notice them, a glance, a word, a fleeting expression. And when it breaks, the world tilts, and the ground you thought solid gives way beneath your feet. The evening air carried the scent of wet leaves and the distant warmth of fireplaces from neighboring homes. I sipped my tea slowly, letting the steam rise and swirl before me, meditative and calming. Life was not cruel, I reminded myself. Life was patient. And perhaps, patience was a gift I had yet to understand. I turned off the lamp and closed my eyes, thinking of the gentle rhythm of our mornings, the soft chatter over coffee, the sound of the rain against the roof. Tomorrow, I told myself, tomorrow would be another ordinary day, but ordinary was a fragile veneer. And by sunrise, I would discover the first crack in that illusion, a betrayal so subtle that it nearly went unnoticed, but one that would change everything. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, painting the walls in soft gold. I moved through the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 cups, the familiar aroma mingling with the faint scent of rain lingering in the air. Everything seemed ordinary, yet I felt the pulse of unease I had first noticed the day before. Clara arrived, cheerful as ever, carrying her tote bag and an air of purpose. But there was something different, a tension beneath her practiced smile, the way she set the pastries on the table a little too quickly, the subtle avoidance of my gaze. I sensed it immediately, though I did not betray my awareness. I had learned long ago that calm is the armor of the wise. While I arranged the cups, her tablet buzzed with a notification. I did not intend to look, but a glimpse of the screen caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat. House sale, immediate action required. I froze, my hand still on the cup. The world tilted, almost imperceptibly, yet unmistakably. Our house, the walls filled with decades of memories, the rooms where laughter and tears had mingled, the garden where Clara had played as a child, was being sold. By her. My daughter. Clara glanced at me, a practiced casualness on her face. Mom, it's just paperwork, she said lightly. Nothing to worry about. I'm handling it. I forced a smile, my voice calm. Handling it? Yes, she replied, avoiding my eyes. I thought it would be easier for you. I'm just making sure everything goes smoothly. A chill ran through me, though I did not show it. I set the coffee down and nodded, my lips curved in a smile that I hoped concealed the storm building inside. Of course, darling. I trust you know best. Her expression flickered, almost imperceptibly. A shadow of guilt, perhaps, or anticipation. Either way, it told me more than words ever could. She believed she had the upper hand, that she could erase my history without consequence. She was wrong. I went about my morning, deliberately calm. I watered the garden, feeling the wet soil crumble beneath my fingers, listened to the song of the robins as they hopped along the fence. I let the world continue its rhythm while my mind turned over plans, quietly, deliberately. Later, I found myself alone in the living room, the faint scent of jasmine from the candles mixing with the lingering aroma of coffee. I let my mind wander back through years of memories, teaching Clara to ride her bicycle, holding her hand on her first day of school, comforting her through heartbreaks. I had given her my love, my trust, my patience. And yet here she was, plotting a betrayal I could hardly fathom. Remembered my late husband, James, his voice gentle and reassuring. Patience, Eleanor. Life has a way of balancing itself. His words echoed now, a soft refrain against the tumult of my heart. Patience, I realized, was my weapon. Calm was my shield. I would not rush, would not act from anger. I would let the truth unfold. The first cracks of betrayal are almost invisible, like tiny fractures in glass. You notice them in the way someone hesitates, the almost imperceptible lie, the careful choice of words. Clara had left a trail, and I would follow it quietly, invisibly. That evening, she left early, claiming errands. I wandered through the house, breathing in the familiar scents of my life, the lavender polish on the floors, the faint warmth of the tea I had left on the counter, the lingering aroma of her pastries. I paused at the window, watching the city lights blink awake. It was then that I realized something. Betrayal is not only an act. It is a mirror. And in her actions, Clara had revealed herself, not just to me, but to the universe itself. The balance she thought she had disrupted would find its own way. I only needed to wait. As the night deepened, I lit the fireplace. The crackle of the flames echoed softly through the rooms, and I poured myself a cup of tea. I thought of the house, every corner filled with history, every wall holding memories she could never erase. The betrayal had left a wound, but I did not let it show. My calmness was deliberate and quiet. I knew that the coming days would reveal much. Clara would continue her deception, believing herself untouchable, while I observed, waited, and prepared. There was a plan forming in my mind, subtle and invisible, like the roots of an old tree slowly twisting through the earth, and for the first time in days, I felt a strange serenity. The storm was coming, yes. But I would meet it with calm, with patience, with a quiet, inexorable strength that would not falter. By the time Clara returned that night, I had already decided I would not confront her in anger. I would let life, the universe, and my own carefully laid plans reveal the truth. And when that moment came, it would be undeniable. That night, the house felt heavier than usual. The rain had returned, drumming softly against the roof and windows, as if nature itself was aware of the storm brewing within these walls. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window, the soft glow of the lamp casting golden warmth across the room. The scent of wet earth from outside mingled with the faint aroma of jasmine candles I had lit hours earlier. I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders, letting the warmth seep into my bones while I let my thoughts drift. Pain is a peculiar companion. It does not always arrive with a shout. Sometimes it settles silently, a quiet weight pressing into your chest, shaping itself into something deeper. As I sat there, memories flooded me. Clara as a child, the tiny hands she had once placed in mine, the nights I had rocked her to sleep, the soft laughter in the kitchen as she shared stories of school, the heartbreaks I had comforted her through. And now, this, she had betrayed me. Sold our home, the house that held decades of our lives, without asking. Without a word. It was not anger that filled me, but a profound sorrow, a deep, cutting ache that threatened to unbalance the very rhythm of my heart. Yet, even in the depths of that pain, clarity emerged. I had lived long enough to know that anger is fleeting, impulsive, and often regretted. Patience, however, is enduring. Calm, deliberate action is a form of power that cannot be rushed or broken. And so I began to plan. The plan was not born from cruelty, but from the quiet necessity of justice. Subtle. Precise. Unseen. I would not shout or confront. I would let the truth reveal itself, like sunlight slipping through the cracks in a dark room, illuminating everything in its path. Began by cataloging the house itself. Every room held memories, every corner contained pieces of our lives. Hidden in the attic were boxes of letters, photographs, and keepsakes, fragments of a history Clara could not erase, documents that could expose her actions. I moved through the house with meticulous care, checking locks, reviewing papers, arranging small surprises that would one day reveal the depth of her betrayal. As I worked, I remembered my husband, James. His voice, gentle and steady, whispered in my mind, "Eleanor, patience is the greatest weapon. Wait, and the truth will shine." I smiled faintly, feeling his presence as though he were beside me. Life had taught me to endure, to absorb the weight of sorrow and transform it into purpose. The next days were a delicate dance. Clara continued her charade, showing buyers around the house, talking about renovations, imagining her life in the space we had shared. She believed she controlled everything, unaware that I was quietly shaping the course of events from the shadows. Each night, I sat by the fireplace, sipping tea, listening to the rain, and imagining the moment when the truth would come to light. I thought of the satisfaction not in her punishment, but in the quiet restoration of balance, the poetic justice that comes not with anger, but with inevitability. Memories of Clara's childhood became my guide. I remembered the lessons of integrity, patience, and compassion I had tried to instill in her. Those lessons had not prevented betrayal, but they had taught me how to respond. I would act not out of passion, but from wisdom, from the deep understanding that the universe has a way of correcting itself. Also began small, almost imperceptible preparations, rearranging documents, ensuring the camera in the living room was discreetly positioned, double-checking legal papers. Each step was a whisper in the wind, unnoticed, yet crucial. Every moment Clara believed she was in control, she was moving closer to the revelation I had carefully orchestrated. At night, I would sometimes pause and close my eyes, remembering my own mother's voice. Strength, Eleanor, is not always loud. It is quiet, enduring, and unseen. And I felt that strength settle in me, a calm fire that would not waver. I did not allow myself the luxury of despair. Instead, I transformed it into resolve. The pain became fuel, the sorrow became strategy. I knew that one day soon, Clara's confidence would falter, the illusion of control would crumble, and the quiet justice I had cultivated would emerge. And yet, even in my plotting, I felt no hatred. only the steady, unshakable calm of someone who has endured betrayal and chosen to rise above it. Life, I realized, does not require vengeance. It requires patience, observation, and the courage to let truth unfold on its own schedule. By the end of that week, the plan had taken shape. I would not confront Clara with words. I would not cry. I would not shout. I would simply allow life, carefully guided by my subtle interventions, to reveal the depth of her betrayal. The universe would do the rest, and in that quiet, I felt a sense of peace I had not known since the moment I first discovered her intentions. The storm was coming, yes, but it would not surprise me. I would meet it with calm, with patience, and with the quiet power that comes from knowing that the truth, when revealed, is far more devastating than any act of anger. The house was filled with the soft glow of candlelight, the gentle crackle of the fireplace, and the faint whisper of the wind through the oak trees outside. In that stillness, I understood something profound. Betrayal is painful, but it also teaches endurance, resilience, and the quiet art of justice, and so I waited. The house had grown quieter, yet the air itself seemed heavier, as if it carried the secrets I had begun to weave into its walls. Morning light streamed through the curtains in golden slants, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The familiar smell of polished wood and old books comforted me, but now it carried a new tension, the anticipation of what was to come. Clara moved through the rooms with her usual efficiency, unaware that each step she took brought her closer to the truth I had quietly prepared. She was meticulous in her planning, finalizing paperwork, showing prospective buyers around, imagining the life she would carve out of my decades of memories. She believed she was in control, but she had overlooked one crucial detail. I had spent weeks preparing, quietly and deliberately, leaving traces of evidence hidden in plain sight. Began my mornings as I always had, pouring coffee, listening to the hum of the city, feeling the damp scent of rain lingering in the streets. But now, every detail mattered. Each photograph, each document, each corner of the house was a piece of a silent puzzle that Clara would not recognize until it was too late. The attic, in particular, had become a treasury of subtle reminders of the life we had shared. Boxes of letters, old photographs, and keepsakes, some sentimental, some revealing, were carefully arranged so that when the time came, they would speak for themselves. There were contracts Clara had signed, documents she had believed private, letters from friends and family that chronicled events she thought long forgotten. Every item was a quiet witness to her actions, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal itself. I watched her from a distance, observing her confidence, her ease, the way she laughed at a buyer's casual remark in the living room. She believed herself untouchable. I could almost hear her thoughts, "I've done this carefully. No one will question me." And yet, the house itself was now a subtle accomplice to my plan, each creaking floorboard and quiet corner bearing witness to what she had done. Some nights, I would walk through the rooms silently, letting my fingers trace the edges of furniture, the curves of picture frames, the smooth surface of old tables. I would pause at the corners where dust had gathered, feeling the weight of years and memories pressing gently against my palms. The house had always been alive with history, and now it was quietly poised to reveal secrets she had underestimated. Also began small interventions, rearranging papers subtly so that discrepancies would appear, placing certain documents in plain sight, ensuring the camera in the living room captured every step. These were not acts of malice, but careful orchestration, subtle choreography of truth. Each step Clara took in her unawareness only drew her closer to the inevitable revelation. Sometimes I would sit by the fireplace, the warm glow flickering across the room, and reflect on the past. I remembered the first time Clara had held my hand as she learned to ride a bicycle, the way she had clutched it tightly, trusting me completely. Those memories were bittersweet now, a reminder of innocence lost, trust broken, and the resilience I had cultivated in response. One evening, as the rain tapped lightly against the windows, I arranged a particular set of letters in the attic. They were from her early childhood, her teenage years, friends' notes, and long-forgotten contracts, subtle hints, almost invisible yet undeniable when discovered. I smiled faintly, knowing that the storm I had been preparing for was quietly taking shape. Clara remained oblivious. She laughed, joked, and carried on with her plans, while the house, and I, held the silent threads of her unraveling. Every step she took, every document she signed, every careless glance she gave to the walls, was bringing her closer to a confrontation she could not escape. The days passed with quiet tension, the rhythm of normal life overlaying the delicate undercurrent of my plan. I tended the garden, feeling the damp soil crumble beneath my fingers, listening to the faint hum of the city, smelling the lingering scent of wet leaves and jasmine from my candles. The world continued in its ordinary rhythm, unaware of the quiet justice building within these walls. Then, one afternoon, Clara went upstairs to the attic, humming softly. I followed at a distance, deliberately, letting her discover some of the carefully placed letters. She paused, lifting a box slightly, and frowned as she noticed a stack of documents she had not expected. I could see the momentary confusion flicker across her face, quickly masked by casual composure. She didn't notice the photographs tucked behind the boxes, or the contracts that revealed her actions, or the letters that chronicled years of our life together. Not yet. The pieces were beginning to align, subtly, inexorably. That night, as I sat by the fireplace, sipping tea, the rain falling softly outside, I felt a sense of calm. The plan was unfolding, the truth quietly revealing itself. Clara had believed she was in control, but control is an illusion when the threads of reality are carefully guided. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, listening to the gentle crackle of the fire and the soft hum of the night. Betrayal had entered my life, but patience, observation, and subtle action were my allies. And soon, the truth, inevitable, undeniable, would come to light, not through confrontation, but through the quiet orchestration of justice that life itself provides. The storm was approaching. And when it arrived, Clara would see that the house, the life we had built, the memories we had shared, had not forgotten, had not yielded, and had been waiting, silently, for the moment of revelation. The morning was unusually still, the kind of calm that precedes a storm. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long, warm stripes across the polished floors. The house seemed to hold its breath. I moved deliberately, carrying a tray of tea and biscuits into the living room, the faint scent of lavender from the polish mingling with the warm aroma of the tea. Every detail mattered today. Clara arrived shortly after, her usual confident stride in place, but I could sense a subtle shift, a small tremor of anticipation she didn't yet recognize. She laughed lightly, trying to mask the tension that had begun to thread through the house. She believed she was in control, but the invisible threads of truth had been quietly drawn around her. "Mom, I hope you haven't been waiting long," she said, her voice smooth but carrying a hint of uncertainty. "Not at all, darling," I replied, smiling softly. "I thought we might sit together for a bit before your buyer arrives. It's been such a lovely day, hasn't it?" Clara nodded, still unaware. I poured the tea, the warm liquid steaming in delicate curls. I watched her, noting the subtle twitch of her fingers, the faint narrowing of her eyes as she scanned the room, perhaps sensing a tension she could not yet name. After a few moments of quiet conversation, I said casually, "Have you checked the attic lately?" "The attic," she repeated, a trace of hesitation flickering across her features. "I don't think I've had a reason to." "Oh, you might want to take a look," I said, my voice gentle, almost playful. "There are some boxes, some memories, you might find interesting." Her smile faltered, replaced by the faintest shadow of doubt. She followed me upstairs, each step a rhythm of tension and anticipation. I could feel it, the precise moment was near. The attic was dimly lit, shafts of sunlight slicing through the dusty air. I moved to one corner, motioning casually to a stack of boxes. "Here," I said. "Some things I thought you'd like to see." Clara lifted a box, her eyes scanning its contents. Her brow furrowed as she noticed letters and photographs she had never seen before. She opened a small envelope, and as her eyes widened, I could almost hear the quiet collapse of her confidence. I watched her carefully, maintaining my calm composure, feeling the quiet satisfaction of preparation meeting fruition. Documents she thought private, contracts she had signed, letters chronicling our family history, all laid out to reveal her actions. Each piece was undeniable. Her face went pale. She turned to me, voice barely a whisper. You planned this? I shook my head slowly, calm as the wind over a still lake. No, Clara. Life planned this. I only waited. Her eyes searched mine, a desperate plea for understanding, for some reprieve from the truth she had ignored. But there was none to give. The evidence was clear, undeniable, and she had walked straight into it. At that moment, the buyer arrived, entering the house just as Clara was trying to gather her composure. I invited him in with a warm smile, offering tea and biscuits. He noticed immediately the discrepancies in the paperwork Clara had hastily tried to present. Questions were asked, clarifications demanded, and slowly, the illusion she had maintained began to crumble. I watched silently as Clara's confidence disintegrated. Her shoulders slumped, her hands trembled, and the mask she had worn for weeks finally fell away. She had believed herself untouchable, but the truth, quietly orchestrated, had caught her unaware. I did not speak more than necessary. My calmness was deliberate, a mirror to the storm in her heart. As the buyer examined the documents, her attempts at control faltered, her explanations fumbling under the weight of the evidence I had placed so carefully. In that room, filled with sunlight and the faint scent of lavender and tea, justice unfolded quietly, inevitably. Clara had acted in betrayal, but she had underestimated the patience and precision of someone who had endured a lifetime of trust and love. When the buyer finally left, shaking his head and clearly disturbed by the revelations, Clara slumped into a chair, her face pale and her eyes haunted. I poured myself another cup of tea, the warmth spreading slowly through my hands, my chest calm, my mind at peace. You see, darling, I said softly, leaning slightly forward, sometimes life corrects itself. You can't erase history, no matter how carefully you plan. Tears welled in her eyes, but I did not offer comfort. I did not need to. The lesson had been learned. The house remained, the memories preserved, the betrayal exposed, and in that moment, as the sunlight shifted and danced across the room, I felt the first real sense of relief since discovering her intentions. The storm had arrived, as it always must, and I had met it with calm, with patience, and with the quiet certainty that truth, in the end, is unavoidable. For Clara, the weight of what she had done pressed down fully, unrelenting and undeniable. For me, Eleanor Hart, 72, the quiet justice I had orchestrated was complete. The balance had been restored. The house was calm again. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet clarity, the kind that settles over everything once chaos is spent. Sunlight poured through the windows, warm and soft, illuminating the polished floors and familiar corners that had held our lives for decades. The faint scent of lavender from my polish mingled with the morning air, and I breathed deeply, letting it fill me with a sense of peace I had not known in weeks. Clara had left that morning. She packed quickly, moving out of the house that she had tried to claim, carrying only what she could fit in her car. I did not follow. I did not call after her. She had learned her lesson. Life had delivered it gently, inexorably, like the tide reshaping the shore. I moved through the rooms slowly, feeling the weight of memories in every corner. The living room, where we had laughed together and cried together, smelled faintly of tea and old books. The kitchen, with its worn counters and faint scent of pastry, held echoes of our shared mornings. The house, my home, had endured. It remembered. And so did I. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the wind rustle the oak leaves outside. The streets glistened with the last remnants of rain, and the city hummed softly in the distance. I thought of my husband, James, and whispered his name, imagining his presence beside me. We did it, my love. We kept our home. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared entirely, but it had been transformed. The anger, the hurt, the disbelief, all were replaced by calm understanding. Justice had not needed shouting or fury. It had required patience, careful observation, and the quiet orchestration of truth. And now, the world had corrected itself. I thought of Clara sometimes. Not with hatred, not with resentment, but with recognition. She had made choices. She had acted out of greed and impulsiveness. And the universe, with its subtle rhythm, had shown her the consequences. For me, there was serenity. A deep, abiding calm that came not from revenge, but from knowing that life, patience, and wisdom had worked together to reveal the truth. The home was intact, the memories preserved, and I was free to live the remainder of my days with dignity and quiet satisfaction. I smiled softly, sipping my tea, letting the warmth seep into me. Life, I realized, often gives us moments like this, rare, fragile, and perfect, when justice and peace coexist. And when those moments arrive, they feel like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. The wind whispered outside, carrying the faint scent of wet leaves and jasmine from the candles I kept lit. I knew, in my heart, that all was as it should be. And as I settled into my chair, I whispered to no one in particular, the past may have its shadows, but the present is ours to cherish. Sparkles, if you've enjoyed Eleanor's story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more real-life emotional stories that touch the heart. Every story is crafted to remind us of strength, hope, and the quiet power within us all. Don't miss the next chapter. Hit that subscribe button now.